Hey guys, Cleanblade here, bringing another Pokemon TCG online video, and today is the Talk Thursday. As promised, I'm bringing you guys a video. I just want to talk about something. It probably won't be a very long video. I just want to talk about how people think the meta is in this current format. Right now, I think the meta is kinda, I don't know how you would say it, pretty slow and clunky in the current meta, except for very few amounts of decks in Standard, in my opinion. Sorry for the lawnmower, it was really bad timing. But other than that, I really feel like the meta is just this slow, clunky meta that really isn't all that great, in my opinion. And I mostly say this because compared to the last meta where we had all the draw support and we were able to just burn through our decks like it was no questions asked, now it's like it seems like Birch just isn't doing what it's supposed to do. It just doesn't draw us enough, and we don't have cold risks or anything like that. So I think that's like a big hit to the current meta. But this could be all pure, I don't know, me being weird and everybody else liking the meta. And I personally think the meta's a little bit too slow, in my opinion. I think that they should do something to maybe speed up the meta just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. I just think we need a little bit something to keep the meta going, if that makes sense. Because right now, I know a lot of people are just like, the meta is really slow and there's not many aggressive decks. But the aggressive decks that they are doing really well, like Vespiquen, and occasionally the fighting decks with like Lucario, who get off to a good start right off the bat and are able to just apply major pressure, do really well. But the problem is there's just such a limited amount of decks that are good, because those aggressive decks who 9 out of 10 times always beat the slow-paced decks, if that makes sense. So the problem that we run into is that we don't know whether or not the slow-paced decks are just not as good, or whether they're good and the fast-paced decks are just broken. Now, I'd have to say one thing, that I think Vespiquen is rather broken in the current format, and I think Vespiquen is probably the best deck in the current standard format, that is. Not expanded, standard. So that's just my opinion, though. I'm sure plenty of people have different opinions. But I feel like because of that, all the slower decks, they're good, but only to a certain degree. When you verse other decks besides Vespiquen and like Lucario bats, you do just fine because you're a slower deck and you're able to just deal with everything that comes your way, if that makes sense. But other than that, it feels like you're just like overly slow against these other decks, and it really seems like you can't get anything going in the slightest degree because of the meta speed, and that's mostly caused by the supporters that are in the meta. But you can also say, well, then run more Shaman, but that means that takes up more bench space. And for the slower decks, usually you need your bench space. Usually you need it to deal with things, if that makes sense. You need it to either run like a Blastoise or something like that, if just an example. Or a Reshiram or a Hydreigon or something like that. Usually you have your bench space used up as your support because you are running all these slower Pokemon. They need support to accelerate once you get them out. You can't be wasting even more turns to accelerate them, if that makes sense. And I think that's a really big problem in this format. And I think Pokemon thought it would be just fine because we did have Shaman get released. But the thing is I think overall, it might have hurt us more than they would have anticipated, I guess you would say. Because sure, having Shaman is a great thing. We all love our Bianca Shaman, essentially, if that makes sense. But that takes up one slot in your bench space, and now if I was running a different deck than Metacham, let's say, I'd want these bench spaces for more than likely something else, if that makes sense. If I was, like, running, let's say, let's just give off an example of, like, Flygon Shaman Dusknoir, let's say, even though that's an expanded deck, but I'm just using this as an example. We want the bench space to have Flygons and Dusknoirs down, and those are the slow decks that I'm talking about. Or like Metagross, the new Metagross draw deck, which is a fun deck. It's not made to be super competitive, don't get me wrong on that, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be able to stand its own. And I think the deck is decent, of course. It could be plenty better, but the thing is just when you have this meta that we have right now, it's just such a slow deck, and the current meta is just too fast for it, and I feel like they're kind of ruling out the slower pace decks by keeping the meta the way it is, because of the way the slower supporters that we have means any other deck that isn't using turbo engines as it is probably just going to fall behind, and it's really not going to be able to do much. And I think that's a really big issue that they need to address in probably the next set. I think we need way better supporters than what we get. But this is just my personal opinion. I mean, I'm sure if there's a flip side for the other argument, when you're versing another slow deck, the current meta is probably really slow, and it's really good for those slower types of games, if that makes sense. But when you're not, I feel like it'd be just too slow to handle, if that makes sense. It just seems like it'd be god awfully, just basically slow as hell, essentially. And I don't know, I think like when you're versing non-meta decks versus non-meta decks, I don't think it's a good representation of the meta, because the meta is fast decks, and because Vespa Queen's going to dominate the current standard format. So you need a fast deck that can compete with Vespa Queen, and there's not really a deck that can currently do it at the moment. And I have a feeling that's just why the Pokemon meta, to me, just isn't that fun overall, I guess you would say. But I don't know, it seems really off and really weird, and I don't know if I really like this current format, mostly because of that. So I don't know, and this game I'm totally going to lose because he keeps landing heads on all of his hammers. Yeah, I'm just going to concede here, and I'm going to end the video here. I'm going to know what your guys' opinion is on this. I feel like the meta needs something to spice it up, because, you know, the current format is really slow, but it's this really fast-paced deck that's dominating, and I don't think that's how it should be overall. But yeah, let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think about it and everything like that. And yeah, peace out, guys. We'll see you guys Sunday.